Welcome. We're here to talk about emotions and parenting. And I think in this year, parents have been faced with an impossible challenge. Every parent I talk to all over the world is sharing with me that their kids are tired of being at home, tired of the uncertainty. Parents are feeling overwhelmed. It's been a long haul this last decade since January 2020. And we need to find new ways of engaging. And I'm thrilled to have panelists today who have amazing expertise on parenting and emotions. And we're just going to have a conversation, and you're invited to join us. And if you have questions, if you're watching live, put them in the chat. If you have ideas and thoughts. And if you're watching the recording, please go ahead and add questions in the comments, because we would love to answer them later. I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and I would like you to, panelists, each start by this little challenge, but if you could come up with one word that describes parenting today, and introduce yourself. So, you know, I'm Marlene, I'm in Toronto, et cetera, and my word is. Marlene, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Okay, so hi everybody. I am from Toronto, Canada. I am a mom of two, and I am a child behavior specialist and a parenting coach. And so I help the overwhelmed, frustrated, and tired parent regain their confidence in parenting, and I really help them with the struggles they may be facing with some challenging behaviors with their children. My word would be strengthening. Strengthening. So I would say, you know, we've been stretched, especially within this last year. And it's amazing. I think through all the ups and downs of parenting, I think there's still a lot of strengthening that happens.
Haley, how about you?
Hi. So I love that word strengthening. I just have to say that's not what I had in mind, and I am very grateful for your positive spin on that. My name is Haley Turner. I am a Montessori teacher, now toddler mama. So I stay at home with my little girl, and I have a background in early care and education, as well as early childhood development. Those are my sort of degrees and certifications. And I'm also a certified positive discipline parenting educator and trained in RIE Foundations. So now I am home with my wonderful little one, and I teach positive and respectful parenting courses. Just actually launched today, so I'm so excited about that, and parenting consulting. So it's been quite the adventure, sort of changing shifts, especially during a pandemic, but I've been so grateful for, you know, this opportunity in the world. My word, now I am inspired to use something positive. I was going to say something along the lines of incredibly difficult.
Impossible.
Impossible. That's what it feels like. So, you know, trying to put a positive spin on it, strengthening is just a beautiful way to think of it. I think really it's, in a very odd way, it's connecting, because we're all sort of in this together now. I've never felt quite so connected to parents as I do right now, because here we are all struggling, just trying to get by, me running to this date with you guys after my husband finished a meeting. And I think that's pretty much how everybody's feeling right now. So I feel more connected to parents because we're sort of in this together in some sense.
Yes, the shared pain.
Yes.
Sheena, what's your intro and word?
So my name is Sheena Hill, and I am a responsive parenting and holistic sleep coach at Parenting Works, based here in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm actually a psychotherapist in private practice, so I've been doing parent education exclusively for about 16 years now, and it's definitely, I'm gonna break away from the positive. I'm gonna go the other direction Um, Even though I did see, a few articles floating around the internet that parents are strengthening their skills during this time, because I do teach a lot of classes, but I also provide a lot of one-on-one coaching for families. I see about 20 families a week, which is a lot. So, so I can tell you from, sort of being on the ground, hearing parents talk about their experience with parenting every single day. I think the experience of parenting in the last year or so has been relentless, right? That parents are really feeling like they don't have the opportunities to recharge. They don't have the reserves to be emotionally intelligent and parent the way that they want to parent, even for parents who already had a strong foundation with these skills prior to the pandemic. So my specialty, obviously, I have extensive training in neuroscience, attachment, and not just attachment parenting, right? Attachment theory and attachment wounds. So all of my work is trauma informed, and I actually exclusively take a developmental approach. So I help parents move beyond rewards and consequences altogether. No ignoring, no charts, right? No, praise is a little bit, there's a little bit more leniency with praise, but still we're very, conscientious about how we use praise. And so we just bypass all of that behavior modification and just focus on the needs and skills underneath. So that's one of the things, that I've been helping parents with, certainly, for the past year around the world, is figuring out how to parent in an emotionally intelligent, responsive way, despite all of the stressors that are going on for them personally and, in their larger communities.
Thanks, Sheena. We have some people answering in the chat on the stream. So I'd like to just ask everyone, what's your word? Theo, I saw you said safe. And then also people are answering in the chat about where you are and if you have kids, how old they are. So that's fabulous. I'm based in Santa Cruz, California. My kids, my babies are almost going to be 20 and 22 right now, 19 and 21. And I think my word might be surrender. And parenting young adults in a pandemic. And it's just like, I think there's something really good about it because there's been an illusion of not control. I haven't felt like I was in control since my kids were like 3, but since my kids were like 0, forget it, since before they were born. But this has really pushed that, they're on their journeys. And I have some parents who are like, well, what do you mean you're letting them blah, blah, blah? What is letting them? Like, they're 19 and 21. So it's been fascinating. And actually, it's been really rewarding. There's been some huge gifts of this year as a parent, which maybe we'll get into a little bit later. Let's talk about the word empathy. So what do parents misunderstand about empathy? What's one mistake?
I would love to start that one.
Go.
I think probably one of the biggest misconceptions about empathy and emotional intelligence in general is that the goal is to stop or prevent or shut down emotional work, right? Parents say to me, well, I tried listening to their feelings, Sheena, and they just kept crying and they just kept having a tantrum. Why didn't they say, thanks, Mom, I feel really validated, or hey, Dad, I feel seen, right? And then stop being upset about that thing. And obviously we can laugh about it, right? But when parents are using these tools, a lot of times they expect it to somehow be this magic salve. And the truth is, empathy and, really offering that high quality listening brings emotional work. It invites more felt safety. And so I think parents are often confused and overwhelmed and probably frustrated when they try to use emotional intelligence tools and they're not working right the way that they think they should be working.
Marlene, how about you? What's the confusion about empathy?
Yeah, I would say, I feel that parents feel like they need to completely understand and agree with that emotion, right? So I don't understand, why this is bothering it. Why this is bothering them again. Like we've talked about this so many times, right? So it's that, I don't get it. Like, and it's like, you don't need to get it, right? It's not your feeling, it's their feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly remember especially when they were little, there were times where I'm just like, this makes no sense to me, but I can see that it's real for you.
Yeah.
So Haley, when you're talking to people about empathy with little ones, and don't forget to unmute, where do we get started with really little kids?
So with little ones, I think the common sort of misconception is that they're not able to do these things yet. They're not able to start working on their, that empathy muscle in themselves, and that they're not able to identify their emotions just yet, when in reality, they're incredibly capable from the start. They really are. So making that sort of big shift in parenting to see our children as capable beings is so powerful. As a Montessori teacher, I mean, it's been a decade of me shifting into that mindset of seeing them as so incredibly capable and really respecting that they are able to, learn these new tools and process their emotions. So I want to just offer parents a step-by-step, I think, on what this sounds like to sort of conceptualize, okay, well, what can I do? And, like Sheena was saying, it does become a little bit difficult when we, we think that our kids are, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I'm listening to my little one in the other room right now, if you guys can hear her. I guess that's mom life, right?
That's 2021, right?
Right? I'm like, nothing could be more, reality during this live stream right now than hearing her process her emotions right back there. Because there's quite a lot of them, and they are valid. And, it's not just that emotion coaching and empathy, like Sheena said, that we're just going to offer them some empathy and that'll be it, and they'll just move on, ready to go. But we really want to teach them, the magic of learning about your emotions, feeling what it feels like in your body when you start to get mad. Where are you feeling that tension in your body? Being able to identify that before they sort of lose it entirely and are stuck in this meltdown moment where they're no longer in a moment of connection because their lids have flipped. So emotion coaching, or setting these empathetic limits, can be really simple. I know parents worry about getting that perfect script right. So it sort of turns my stomach to give everybody a script, because I don't want to put that pressure, but I'm just going to walk you through it and we'll figure it out from here, right? So the first thing that we want to do is we'll just notice, what do you see? What are you seeing? You're looking sad, my love. You're noticing that. You're giving it a name for them that helps them just a little bit to calm down, giving it that validation. And then you're listening. So once you say, oh, you look sad, you might hear a big belt out, I'm more sad. I'm sad. If you think about when you're on the verge of tears and someone says, hey, what's going on with you? Are you sad? And then that's it. That's, you start crying and crying. So we want that release for them. Crying is a good thing. That's not a bad thing. There's no bad feelings, right? But then we want to validate, right? So just an example, maybe it's something like, oh, man, they said something that hurt your feelings. I get that. I would be upset too. Because we want that to feel validating, even if it's something that in our minds doesn't make that much sense. Like they wanted the orange juice instead of the apple juice. Ah, man, you really wanted that instead. Man, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. And this is what's available right now. So we do want to make sure that we're setting that limit, but we want to connect with them first, because it can end up being like, here's orange juice. No, I want apple. No, I want milk. Back and forth, because it's hard to be a toddler and want all these very different things, right? So we want to be sure to connect first. Always remember, really get down on their level if you can. If you're holding your newborn baby, you can't get down on your knees right now. We get it. That's okay. But you want them to hear it in your voice. So you're connecting, and then set that limit. Right now we have orange juice available to you, my love. That's what we have. Okay. And then, that might lead to more feelings, but it's okay to validate what's going on with them. Be sure that they know that it is valid, because in a toddler's mind, that is more than enough for them to, flip their lid and start to have a meltdown. It's completely reasonable for their development, actually. And I think that helps parents a whole lot to know, like, this isn't crazy. This isn't unusual and weird. Maybe you are over the age of 25 and have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, but our little ones just aren't there yet. So I think that's sort of a good sort of walk into emotion coaching.
Thanks, Haley. I want to talk about parents for a second, because as I'm hearing Haley talking, I'm remembering myself with my little ones quite a while ago, but I remember myself absolutely flipping my lid. Sheena, what is the starting point? If you taking myself back to that moment with toddlers, where I am just insanely enraged by the fact that my 3-year-old will not get in the bath. And it's like, I know you like the bath. Why? And then, of course, 45 minutes later, it's like, time to get out of the bath. No, I'm not going to get out of the bath. And then I'm enraged again. And I remember like grabbing this screaming, kicking, wet 3-year-old and taking him out of the bath, and just like feeling like such a jerk. So what do I do?
Well, I do actually have like a step-by-step series of graphics as a freebie on my Instagram link. So it will walk you through all the steps. But in terms of in the heat of the moment, I think one of the most important things that parents can do, like Haley mentioned briefly, is understand development. We have to know that our kids' behavior is not only valid, but totally developmentally appropriate. I feel like the biggest part of my job is telling parents that's normal, right? And so knowing the why behind the behavior helps us have more empathy, right? We can certainly think more clearly and respond better when we understand that it's not manipulation. And Marlene said it earlier, right? It's their stuff, not our stuff. So what comes up for us in the moment, what gets in the way tends to be our stuff. All the memories and experiences that we've stored in our nervous system from, having to do something that we didn't want to do, or not being validated, or not being listened to. And our body really is a repository for all of that information. So not only is it important to understand the root cause in the moment, one of my main things that I do with parents is we figure out what's going on in the moment, and then I tell them, bring it back to our sessions, right? Because we have to get ahead of those triggers. We have to understand for ourselves what's coming up, why it's coming up, and what we can do about it, because we're not going to be able to do that work in the heat of the moment. If we've already lost it, and we're about to say or do something that we're going to regret, that we would never do or say if we were thinking clearly, that is not the time to be practicing our skills and saying, oh, I shouldn't yell, right? We can't think clearly enough to remember that. So we have to really get ahead of our triggers and our skills. And this takes time. I mean, like a year or more with consistent support.
I would go more than a year.
Yeah. I mean,
Daddy is taking a time out now.
So having that developmental understanding, having that personal awareness and reflective ability, and really working on our own skills and healing, because we all have attachment wounds. I know it makes people uncomfortable to think about it, but we really do. So that is the foundation that allows us to, before we even get into that moment, practice some skills and have some tools under our belt, so that in the moment we can stay regulated. We can remind ourselves, my job is to help my child. My job is not to get sucked into the undertow of what they're experiencing. But that regulation takes tremendous effort and work. So it's not a quick fix.
I think that for me, this piece about my own hurts and my own patterns really came up when we had our second child. And I don't know if it's because he was a boy and I was a boy, but I started thinking a lot about my relationship with my biological father and a lot of unresolved stuff. And I think that was really fueling my fear.
Mm-hmm.
And also really not wanting to be that kind of parent. We have a question in the chat that I want to bring in here. And I think it's an interesting question in general about working in different cultures where there are different norms. Anyone want to take a shot at this? Marlene, I see you unmuting.
Yeah, yes. This is such a great question because, yes, culturally for myself, like feelings, like you're not allowed to have feelings, first of all, right? You get in trouble for sharing feelings. When you do have feelings, you're labeled, the crybaby or emotional or, all these negative labels. And so it is tough. I remember growing up again in an environment where, and I was that crybaby, right? I was very sensitive and very emotional and always kind of questioning, like, what is wrong with me? And so again, these things, as we said, that comes up again as we become parents. And so it is so important that we even recognize that. And so that even goes part to my question. I don't know if we're going to do this now, Joshua, but how do you emotionally coach your child when, again, you are having such a difficult time with your own emotions? And so even with that, I think the first thing is being able to recognize and reflect, right? You've really got to sit down with yourself and ask yourself some questions. How do you feel with emotions? Do your children trigger you when you see them cry and become emotional? Do you think that their crying is manipulation? And again, going back to your childhood, what was your experience as a child? How did your parents show emotion? Did you ever see them cry? Really being able to be aware and recognize those things, I think, are so important. And then again, being able to, once you've been able to realize that, again, doing some really hard work with that, and then being able to learn and label, okay? So, and this is a process that you can even do with your kids when you're beginning to learn about what are these emotions that I'm feeling? What are these triggers that I'm feeling? Why does this trigger me? And being able to identify this, again, with your kids. So, wow, okay, so they're crying. Again, what's really happening? Being able to ask yourself, or being able to realize, these emotions, it's information. I need to look at it as something is wrong. There's information here, or not even something is wrong. I shouldn't even say something is wrong, but it's information. So what is it telling you? And so being able to learn and being able to label those feelings are so important. And so when I'm working with parents, I always think of like, what are some creative, fun ways that you can be able to learn and do it with your kids? And so I just wanted to show you this little board. I don't know if you can see it, that I created out of Lego. with a few, of the color zones, and I have, this as well, that kind of, again, being able to label. So what are you? Were you disappointed when that was happening? How was that feeling? And then you can put your little Lego, throughout the day and check in. And I think it's great because even as a parent, right? Check in with yourself. Okay, wow, I can kind of see that mommy's in the red zone right now. And that's okay, right? Your kids should know that, we're not going to be, they know we're not in a happy bliss all the time. They know more than anybody else. But right, I think it's okay. And we begin to learn that. And I think as a community, especially within, the African American or Canadian community, that we begin to talk about it more and really begin to normalize it.
And can I add on to that, Joshua?
Please.
What I'm hearing is a lot of concern about parenting against the grain, right? And I hear this from a lot of parents that I work with as well, that yes, I want to parent this way, but my mother-in-law or my mom or my sister says, you just need to spank them. You just need to put them in timeout, right? Or their teacher even sometimes, right? And so it is really hard work to parent upstream. That doesn't mean it's not worth it, right? And there are some fabulous Instagram and Facebook accounts that, I think all parents should follow, but especially
like the three of you.
Well, actually, these are accounts that are ran by Black women or parents of color, and I think that it's really important to, because obviously this is one of the things that I teach in various communities. I was just teaching about this last night, but it's also important for families to hear it, that this is not a white concept, right? This is not something that's just for a certain population of parents. This is good for all children and all parents. And that doesn't mean there's not, there aren't barriers, right? There are barriers, but there are lots of places to get support, both conceptually and logistically, to work through those barriers. So, I love that question, but I want to emphasize for the person who asked, and for every parent who is feeling that for whatever reason, right? Yes, it is challenging to parent against the grain, and that doesn't mean it's not worth it, but make sure that you're getting the support to do that, because it's really challenging.
So I'd like to shift to a question about our own experience as parents, where we misunderstood our kids. And I'll start. Give you each a moment to think about this, and all of you in the chat, I would like you to think about this as well, because I think there's a huge amount of learning for us in looking at one of those moments where our own assumptions maybe got in the way. And one of them for me was with my daughter, my older child, when they were about 4 years old. They would have a fight with their brother, and then I would say, let's talk about what happened. And they wouldn't talk. And later, what I learned is that they are a person with a lot of anxiety. And I didn't know that at the time. I mean, I knew they were anxious, but I didn't realize how significant that was. And so I made an assumption at that time that this person was not very empathic, and that they were being obstinate, and they were in a power struggle with me when I'd say, let's talk about what just happened. And fortunately, it wasn't like a big profound realization on my part. It was like, I'm desperate, let's try something different. I said, why don't you go have a timeout, and when you're ready to talk about it, let me know. And that turned out to be one of the best things that happened in our relationship as parent and young child, because they wanted to talk about it. But it was what I was thinking was like lack of empathy and obstinance was actually anxiety. And I just completely misunderstood what was going on for them. Someone else have one of your misunderstandings? I had a few years to think about that one, but Haley, go ahead.
I just, only because this was this morning in my home, we come across having a 2.5-year-old power struggles every day. We do all the work to try to get around them and to avoid them and to put the autonomy in her hands. And sometimes it doesn't happen. And luckily, I have this background. My husband, who is also a teacher, though, with middle school children, isn't quite there with understanding the toddler mind. And I always ask his permission to like lay it all out there. And he's a very kind man to let me talk about these things. But so this morning, our little one, she has her little Montessori set up in her room where she can pick out her clothes so that I can pass her some more autonomy, because I know that's what she's striving for as a toddler, right? That's their goal, to become independent humans. And this morning she did that. She picked out an outfit, came into our room, and it was time to get dressed. She had taken her pajamas off. She is able to do the zipper by herself. So here I am giving her like little bits of autonomy and setting my firm limit that it's time to get dressed for the day, because we've got to sort of get moving here. And all of a sudden just threw herself on the ground and did not want to get dressed. And I mean, we did connection after connection, and my husband came in and he's like, she's just being difficult. She's just trying to be difficult. And at this point, though, I keep mentioning the flipped lid. But so what that just means is she's in meltdown mode now. She's not in a receptive state with me. So I'm there just validating. I'm understanding that, okay, I do have some extra time. I'm not going to have to get her dressed. I'll wait until she's a little bit more receptive and see what happens here. So a few minutes go by, I sit down on the floor and say, can you tell me what's going on? She's saying, no. And then finally she starts looking over at my dresser and she goes, for me, for baby. And I'm like, for baby what? I don't know, my love. I want to understand. And she had her favorite outfit had just gotten washed, and it was on top of our dresser, not in her little wardrobe. And we had no idea that that's what was going on. So here we are making the assumption, this is just being difficult, or, something small didn't go her way, whatever it was. She had this desire to wear her favorite outfit. This is one of my favorite sweaters. I would be upset if I didn't get to wear it to talk with you guys. And we get that when we can sort of take that shift, slow down before jumping in there into the power struggle and going in like, you're just being difficult. You've got to put this on, yada, yada, yada. And just give, it was 2 minutes. That was all it took to be able to connect with her again and to get to that point of, okay, I see what's going on. And it is valid for her, but I would say that was pretty valid for me too. If I saw something I wanted to wear and as a toddler didn't really have the ability to communicate while I was starting to panic that this is what I needed right now. So I think that is an assumption and a power struggle that many of us come across in our parenting journeys that I felt would really resonate.
I think we can all raise our hands to having been in that one. Sheena, how about you? What's one misunderstanding you look back and go, ooh, oops?
Yeah. There's a few, but the one that sticks out most in my mind is, my oldest is 16. And so I had the false assumption many years ago that this kind of parenting, which I've been doing since she was born, would save her from the challenges of adolescence, right? I really thought, okay, she's not going to be an emotional teen because I've been parenting her in this really responsive way, and we have all this attachment. And when she was about 11 or 12 and going through some real teen stuff, right? I remember being so frustrated by that. Like, no, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for, a child that would have these skills. And so obviously, there's many years between then and now. And I would say for the most part, there's not a ton of teen stuff, right, in terms of our relationship. But she still is a teen in terms of her life. She still gets her heart broken. She got waitlisted for her first choice school, right? I mean, she had to spend her 16th birthday in a pandemic instead of with her friends at a big party the way that she wanted. So there are still hormones. There are still realities that I can't save her from, that I can't fix for her. And so one of my realizations was that responsive parenting doesn't inoculate our kids against all of the challenges of the world. It does create a good skill set, and the relationship obviously creates the buffer, which I think is the key part, because we've talked about it. I've shared it a little bit before. She's asked me during the pandemic, can you just hold me while I cry and complain about all the things I've lost? She's 16. I mean, she's taller than me, right? But so that part, I know that the responsive parenting works, so to speak, but it doesn't take away some moodiness or some other things. And Joshua, your initial comment about kids who just shut down, right, who don't want to talk, I actually find that's really common when I talk to parents, even for kids that don't present, with anxiety or don't have that diagnosis. There is a lot of shame in talking about things that went wrong, especially things that are emotional, things that are highly sensory oriented, things that we really don't understand. And especially our young children, they don't have the skills to separate themselves from their behavior enough to talk about it, to say, hey, I was just in a bad mood, or I was just tired. So it does become very easily internalized. And a lot of kids, right, if you ask them, how are you feeling? What happened? Why did you hate your brother? I don't know. So there's, I often talk to parents about focusing a little bit less on some of those questions, right? Not, you want to be curious, but not necessarily in a way that's trying to get information from them, because what we need to do is create that felt safety first. And then, we can offer our kids an opportunity to talk about things, but it's usually not right after the heat of the moment. Usually it does need a little bit of space, not necessarily alone, right? But some space so that some regulation can be regained in order to think clearly enough to talk about it.
Okay, we'll come back to that in one moment because I want to dig into our 4 stories and what are the lessons that we've found in these. Marlene, let's go to your story. And just before that, Sheena, I just wanted to say that feeling that you describe of, I have been trying this to parent, to be a different kind of parent, and my teenager still behaves like a teenager. You described it in a very mild way. For me, it was truly heartbreaking. It was a devastating period of time, and I felt like I kept getting punched in the stomach. And I recognize, stepping back from it, that, of course, teenagers have things they need to do, just like toddlers have things they need to do. But in the moment, it was really devastating for me to see, despite having worked so hard to parent in a different way, that we were still having these very difficult teenage moments. Marlene, how about you? What's one misassumption, if you made any?
Yes. You know what? So as you guys are talking, I was thinking like quite a few actually. But I'm going to keep it to 1. Okay, I'll do this one. So, the other day, online learning has been very difficult for my son. And I know in terms of, executive functioning, there's a lot of skills there that still need to be developed. And so there was this assignment that he had to do. And I realized, like, buddy, you haven't done this, and it's supposed to be done tomorrow. And I said, let me take a look. And, initially I was like, this is so easy. Why haven't you gotten this done yet? Like, you could do this. Right. And I was just like, I kept on saying, like, you can do all of this. I don't know why you haven't started yet. And, he would sit down there for hours, and I would look, and nothing would be done. And I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, this is easy for you. What is happening? And then I sat down and we went through the whole assignment and we got started. And, I spent at least the first half an hour with him. And then he was so excited and he was pumped and he was like, I've got this. I could do this. And I was like, you're feeling good now? He's like, yeah. And then I realized task initiation, Marlene, he has, and I know this, right? But just the whole frustration of, buddy, what is happening? So he has a hard time with starting or knowing how to start the task. He's the kid that just sees a bunch of words on a page and is already just like, oh my God, forget it. I'm out. I don't even know what to do. And so I knew it was something that he could do, but me saying and making him feel like, why can't you get this? You could do this. This is easy, was not helping the situation at all. But yeah, realizing, okay, so he just needs the tools to be able to get started and get that confidence, and then he is ready to go.
Yeah, another one I think we can all relate to. Those homework battles and wow, it brings me back. I'm glad to be done with that phase of parenting. So I'm curious what you're all hearing from these 4 stories. And in the chat, what's a theme? Those of you who are watching live, what's a theme that you heard in these 4 stories? Or what's a lesson for you? And panelists, let's just give you a moment to think about that in just one sentence. So you think about these 4 stories. What's the story of these stories for you? And I could try to sing to give us a little music for thinking, but then all the audience would leave. So I won't do that. But whenever one of you is ready, just let me know.
I think, and I'm not sure if this is, what you were looking for, but to me, as I'm listening to all of this, I think it should really resonate with parents to know that the theme here with 3, 4, people who dedicated their lives to this, there is no perfect parent. Let that be the theme in everything, that no one is perfect and that we all have our unique little beings, and you could have studied this for decades and decades, and it's still going to be hard. There's still going to be really hard times, and to be able to see them for their uniqueness and who they truly are, it's not an easy task. But for me to parent my child, that doesn't mean I'd be able to parent your child the most wonderful way. I know my little one, I'm her expert, but you guys are your child's expert. We just have, those tools to guide and help you get to there. But I think that's a theme, that none of us are perfect. And I'm very happy to hear that.
I actually think I might do a better job parenting your child than my own. there is I was a really cool middle school teacher, and then when I was a parent of middle schoolers, I felt so uncool. I just wanted to bring in a couple of the comments. Jeannie, thank you. And by the way, those of you who don't follow Jeannie on Instagram, I recommend you do, adding to the list of our parent EQ parent Instagrammers. Thank you. And Dilla, absolutely, this one of the key competencies of 6 Seconds model of emotional intelligence is recognizing patterns and just seeing, oh, yes, here we are again. And if we could recognize that earlier, we wouldn't have to go so far down the road. So, the pause that Dola mentions is that pause of going, oh, wait a minute, which is so tough to do. Rula, thank you. That time, that space. And for me, what this is about, Rula, is being a learner as a parent and saying, and it's really what Haley just said, like, I'm learning about this child. I'm learning about being a parent of this child. And it's different than, and they're changing too, which makes it really interesting. Yeah, I think this is so crucial. The behaviors, Haley's 2.5-year-old kicking and screaming on the floor, not getting dressed, that behavior isn't the real story. And I think often we get caught up in the tip of the iceberg, the behavior. All right, let's go to Marlene or Sheena. What's the story of the stories for you, Marlene?
Yeah, and I'm seeing in a few of the comments here, pause. So I would say pause and then be curious, right? And so again, I think we can emotionally get so caught up, but we've really got to take a minute to pause, be curious, ask the why, find those patterns. And when you pause and you're curious, that's when you will find those patterns.
And I think, Theo, your comment is really connected with what Marlene just said. I think we have sometimes an assumption, like I know, Theo, you mentioned you have a 14-year-old. You've had 14 years of being with this person. You know them, but you don't necessarily know them now. And that being able to see them, honoring that they are their own being. I think a lot of times we get caught up with our kids in somehow seeing a reflection of us in them, or somehow they are us. And I know there's a lot of shame for us as parents when our kids aren't being little angels. And being able to step back and say, hey, you are your own person on your journey. And I am my own person on my journey. And I'm here to be a learner. That's a powerful teaching. Sheena, what about for you in the story of the stories?
Well, you, I think, just hit the nail on the head, Joshua. I was going to, just speak about how relationships in general are an ongoing learning, growing process. And if you see it as an opportunity, right, to continue your work as a parent, continue to understand your child, continue to understand your triggers and reactions, continue to build those relational skills, that to me was really what stood out. That it's not just taking a course or reading a book or listening to a podcast or getting a degree or learning. It's really an evolution. And that's obviously true of all relationships, but especially parenting, because as you mentioned, kids are changing constantly. So their needs are changing, their skills are changing, and we have to be able to meet them where they are instead of where we want them to be, perhaps, or where they used to be.
Yep. Yeah. And I just think that place of like, it's the continuousness of it, which on the one hand is part of why it's so exhausting, but also one of the gifts, and if we can really kind of step back from that, whatever the struggle is, and go, wow, we're in a new place of learning together. I just wanted to bring in a couple of more comments from the chat. And I think this is really important, Trina. Their journey, again, it's not about what we expect or what we want or what we did or didn't do. And I'm reminded of Paul Tuff's research, which basically says most of the things we do as parents don't actually make a lot of difference. What really makes a lot of difference is having kids feel heard, having them feel like they have a voice in their future, having them feel like their choices matter. It's not so much what we do, it's really that piece of it. And I think this is really important, Allison. And I think I don't know how you all, as people who are sharing a lot about parenting on Instagram, do. When I was doing this, when mine were little and I was writing about parenting, there wasn't Instagram, and I was blogging. And most of my blog posts were about my train wrecks as a parent, all the things I did wrong. And I didn't want to say like, oh yes, I have this figured out. So I think a lot of times on social media, the messages that get sent out are about what's going well. Like, we rarely see, somebody sent me a Christmas card. It's my favorite parent Christmas card. And like all 4 of them are looking miserable. I just love it. 'Cause, like, the toddler is like squirming and trying to get out of her sweater. And one is like mad. And it's like, I love that, because it was just like, yes, that's the real story of trying to take that Christmas picture. Well, we have come to the point for some final thoughts for today. So what are you taking away from our conversation? What's one thing you want to keep thinking about or remember, or share with? What are you going to share on Instagram from today's conversation? Haley, you want to go first?
Absolutely. So I have had such a wonderful time chatting with you, all of you. I feel like, I spend quite some time on Instagram having it be connected to my business and working so hard to connect with parents. And here, the 3 of you are a perfect example of people who I still don't get to connect with. I haven't seen yet. And it's a beautiful thing to find ways and to find sort of your village and your people. I think a big theme in the chat right now about how it is so important to recognize that, experts in the field, they're still connected to you, in that this parenting gig isn't easy, that it's hard. The thing is, our most powerful tool as parents is our connection, right? That's going to be it. Every single situation that you come across, connect. And then you have, people who have dedicated their lives to it in a generation where now this is all right at our fingertips, and we have the research and the tools. So though there will never be a perfect day as a parent, that doesn't mean that it should be so hard that, you yourself are feeling out of control of your emotions, and you're feeling like there's no guide, there's no nothing. Where in our generation, I feel like this stuff wasn't accessible to my mom, who really tried to do her best, or as easily accessible. So I think this is just so beautiful that here we are on a live stream, able to connect with people all over the world. And to me, that has a really big impact, looking at where these parents are from, chiming in here. So I'm very grateful for this talk. And I think even for me, it's wonderful to hear about the experts in this world having some struggles and being open and honest about it. On my Instagram, the platform itself has been such a gift to me. And the most connected parents feel to me is when I go ahead and I share my disaster of a mess in my house. And that even as a Montessori teacher and parent, my playroom is not perfectly aligned and beautiful all the time, because that's not what play looks like. That's not what that's not what life looks like. So I think just being a little bit more open and honest as often as we can is just really powerful, and, connecting on a beautiful level. So that's sort of my takeaway.
Thank you. I remember I have a picture in my mind only of our living room when we had 2 preschoolers and literally not being able to walk across the living room floor with just all of the chaos. Marlene, how about you? What's your takeaway from today?
Yes, this has been a great conversation. My takeaway would definitely be that, again, we talked about parenting. There's no perfect parenting. There is no, like, anyone that can tell you that, they're lying to you. There's more than just, again, those wonderful Instagram pictures, of families. And I love, Josh, what you were saying, that picture of the what real Christmas photos actually look like. And so just realizing and take a moment to understand that you don't need to be perfect, and that this parenting is a journey. And, I think Sheena and Joshua, you also had mentioned that we're learners. This is a journey. We are learning. And I think even when our kids, are adults and have their own kids, it's still a learning. We're still learning during that time as well.
Thank you, Marlene. And Sheena, what's your takeaway?
I'm always happy to connect with other professionals doing this work. Like I said, when I started, probably you feel this way as well, Joshua, right? It was really, we were a couple of voices in a chasm of opposing voices, and it's just awesome to see how passionate other parents and professionals are about this information. And I think everybody has some great opportunities on the internet to find more of this information and make it more mainstream, which is great. So I'm always eager to connect with other professionals who are doing this work. What I hope parents will take away, which we didn't get to talk about too much, but that'll be sort of my final thought. Self-regulation really comes exclusively from continued experiences with co-regulation. So when we're thinking about empathy, when we're thinking about providing, good listening and helping our kids build emotional intelligence, one of the things that we need to remember is, before we talk about feelings, right, before name it to tame it, obviously, Dan and Tina are awesome. I love their resources, but even they talk about co-regulation first in their books, and everybody forgets that part, right? Everybody goes straight to name it to tame it because it's pithy and, it's easy to remember, but that's not where our work starts. Our work really starts with providing that co-regulation and listening and being there with our child, not to stop their feelings, but to really hold that space for them and be with them in their feelings in a way that is providing an anchor. So I know, especially for young children, but for kids and teens of all ages, parents really, really focus on self-regulation. That's the main buzzword, and self-regulation is fine. That is a real thing, but it is a skill set that is learned exclusively through that safety with others and getting regulation from others. Even as adults, we rely on co-regulation, right? I think the pandemic has shown us that more than ever, hopefully. So that's something that I hope parents really take away from this, conversation, and any resource on emotional intelligence, right? That emotional CPR is always where we start. Don't worry about self-regulation. That's a lower priority, thing. I feel like I always tell parents, your goals are correct, but your timeline needs to be tweaked, right? What you're expecting from your child in terms of their skills or behavior is fine to expect, but you probably need to shift the timeline a bit and either know that it's going to happen much later in life than you expected, or it's going to take longer to develop than you expected.
Well, this is the good news I wanted to end with, is that recently both my 19 and 21-year-olds have said, yeah, you know, this emotional intelligence stuff, there's something useful here. And my 21-year-old said, I really resisted this for a long time, but now I'm starting to see there's something like that's actually good in this EQ stuff. So I'm just like, yes, it might take a few years, but I think we're going to get there. Thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed our time together, and I really appreciated all the conversations in the chat. And reminder, if you're watching the video, drop comments, ask questions. We'll come back and answer questions. And really appreciate everyone being here today. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend.
Thank you.